Welcome to the Average Australian Podcast.
Oh, what a fabulous volley from Tim Cahill! You will not see a better goal than that at the World Cup this season. Oh,
Big
great
save.
save again by Swanson!
Huge save.
Cahill! Tim Cahill has done it again!
Might drop for Fornaroli! Oh, that is simply brilliant!
Hello everybody, welcome back to the Average Australian Football Podcast. We're back with episode 14. I am your host, Chad Tondu, once again joined by Aden. Aden, how are you today, sir?
Doing good. How are you, my friend?
Oh, alright. I've had this, sore ankle for the past week. I think my football career might be over before it began. FIFA-related injury, was it?
It getting up to celebrate a sweaty goal, was it?
A quick turn in the legs, and it's just pulled something.
Oh, you got to watch those skill moves, man.
What do you thought of the round of football? It's been an interesting week, I guess, when you compare it to what we were saying in the podcast last week. I think it's probably good to start with Adelaide United.
Yeah.
We sort of mentioned how there'd be a fallout, a reaction on this game. We talked about if there was a red card, how would they respond to an aggressive moments in the game.
Yeah.
What do you make of the game itself? And there's been obviously the fallout now.
Yeah, I mean, for the game itself, I think it kind of summed up Adelaide's season, actually, in a nutshell, because they actually played really well. If you have a look at the stats, they had a lot of shots on goal. They had a lot of chances, and yet they just couldn't do anything with it. They were competitive. You got to give them that. They put an effort in, but just couldn't finish it off, had no quality in the end, whereas Melbourne had a couple of chances and just slotted them away, and that was the difference. So you've got to give Adelaide credit there. I think it's a big match, always Adelaide versus Victory, and you saw, there's always at least 500, 1,000 maybe Victory fans on that away end, and I think that kind of adds to the atmosphere. And that's why I think we did call it when we said, if it doesn't go Adelaide's way, what's going to happen in terms of will there be fallout? Because it's one thing to lose. It's one thing to lose at home, but when you lose at home and you've got 1,000 Victory fans going off their nut celebrating,
even
right in your face,
were shushing Adelaide, weren't they? They were in their faces about it.
That's right. So that's got to hurt the fans. And look, I don't know exactly what happened at the end of the match there. I'm guessing there was probably the fans venting their frustration at some match officials and coaching staff and whatnot, probably getting a bit abusive verbally.
There's a few fans in front of the box as well, making a bit of noise,
giving it to them. Yeah,
what I find surprising is the division and the bunkering down of the club itself.
Yeah,
to alienate the fans. Maybe not all fans feel this way, but to alienate a majority of the fans and sort of separate the two pieces of the club, it seems very weird. I was expecting Adelaide to lose and then for there to be pressure on the manager, but there hasn't been pressure on the manager. There's been this divide now that's taken center stage.
Yeah, they've turned it around and pushed it back on the fans, and to come out, the statement they released was very defensive. If they came out and released a statement and said, look, we don't condone, abusing our officials and coaching staff and stuff like that, you could go, okay, look, fair enough. They released a statement against that. But then all of a sudden it was this point by point, our recruiting's been great and, we're spending the salary cap. And it actually just made things worse because the fans were saying, okay, so you're spending the full salary cap and this is what we've got to show for it. This is the squad we've got. It's actually made them look even worse. And you got to question it. I'm guessing probably the fans were sort of maybe harping on a little bit about the player quality and stuff, but for the statement to be so specific, it almost feels like they know that that's where the heat is on, the fact that they haven't recruited well, and we called it early on in the season. You look at the recruits, the ins and the outs for them this season, and it just hasn't been good enough from Adelaide.
You said before round one that they hadn't recruited enough, in terms of their departures, they hadn't covered what they lost, and then you add in the Champions League on top of that, and they were always going to struggle.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at their outs, they lost Craig Goodwin, who was one of their main players last year. He went overseas. They lost Bruce Kamau. You've seen him now at Melbourne City. He's been doing really well. They've lost Pablo Sanchez, who was a goal poacher off the bench. He scored about 8 goals for them off the bench. That's nothing to sneeze at. Stefan Mork, he's gone overseas. He was important for them. Gite was on fire in the second half of the season. That's half their first team gone. And they topped it up with Enrique, Guardiola, James Holland, and a few youngsters. Just not good enough. And plus then they had injuries as well to Thirio and Karuska, and it's just been a shambles.
So how does Adelaide fix this, right? Because they've got 10 goals in the league, 14 games played now. Pretty atrocious record, it has to be said. I don't know if you saw the A-League, the official website, they released a mid-season review. They sort of listed the best performance of a club, best player of the club. They listed Ben Garuccio, the left back. Do you think he's been the best player? It's obviously difficult to pick a best player out of a team that's only won the one game.
Yeah, I think he has actually been their standout. He's been consistent. And he has been quite attacking from left back. He's gotten forward a lot. He's gotten a lot of balls into the box. He's gotten some quality delivery. If guys like Guardiola were actually better at converting, he'd probably have a few more assists to his name. I think it's actually... No disrespect to him, but it's probably a bit sad that he is their best player considering the kind of quality that they do have. But there's just been nothing to write home about for them all season. Enrique's hardly played, Thirio's hardly played, Karuska's finally come back in but hasn't really rekindled his form. I think probably Isaias has probably been their other standout player.
You noticed him when he was out, right?
Yeah, they missed him big time when he was gone, and I think he's sort of been the engine of the team. But even he's probably been a little bit quiet by his standards. He's probably just stood out a little bit more this season just because everybody else around him's been poor. But how do they fix it? I don't know. I think they're in trouble. I mean, I don't know if you saw some of the rumours are saying that City might be actually trying to poach the manager or more.
Oh, really?
And that they also want to raid, they want to pinch Thirio and Isaias as well for next season. So if that happens to Adelaide, they're going to be even more decimated than they already are. So
lucky there's no relegation.
Yeah, I think that fans have every right to be upset. I mean, you've gone from winning the double to dead last with only a win against your name in 14 matches. I think it's sad, and whatever the club has to say, they've tried to recruit. It's been all this and that. It's at the end of the day, to go from first to last, something's gone wrong, and I think they actually need to accept responsibility for that. And actually, they should have been thanking the fans for actually still coming out in numbers and supporting the team rather than sort of getting defensive and turning their backs on the fans. Because if the fans stop coming to the games, Adelaide are going to be feeling it. Money-wise and atmosphere-wise, and the players will be even more demotivated, and it's just going to keep spiralling for them. So just completely the wrong approach from the club, I think.
Is it fair to label Guardiola a flop, or do you think it's unfair to label one person in a team that's ultimately struggling, collectively?
I think he has flopped a little bit. He came in with a fairly good pedigree. He's come through the Spanish system, so he's no mug. And technically he's been pretty good. And physically he's been, he's thrown his weight around and he's been in amongst it, but he just doesn't get onto the end of things. He's just half a yard off the pace all the time, just not in the right place at the right time, doesn't show enough desperation. To be fair, he hasn't had that much quality service or delivery, but he could have probably maybe created a few more chances himself.
He's fifth in the league for shots, 29. Yeah. He's 7 behind McLaren.
That's right, and so his conversion rate is probably not good enough, and I think also he's fallen away in the last few weeks. Early on you could say he's still finding his feet, and he did manage to get a few goals, but I think in the last few weeks he's really dropped off as well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him in the second half of the season.
How about Victory? The article obviously points out Marco Rojas as the key player. I think there's no question about that, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's probably been the standout player or one of the standout players in the league as a whole. But I think when Victory they started off quite slowly and he was probably their standout. I think as the seasons wore on, a lot of their other players have gotten better. Ben Kalfala's gotten better. Berish has gotten better. Valeri, Broxham's gotten better. Troisi now is really pretty red hot at the moment as well. So, I mean, Victory are just probably still, for me, the standout side. In the competition, they're just unstoppable at the moment. They're just so much quality, especially in their front third. They're just red hot at the moment.
I'm a bit disappointed that Roy Krishna got suspended for this match coming up, because I feel like Melbourne Victory, they play, I think it's at home to Brisbane, which is a difficult game, but then they've got like the catch-up game midweek against Wellington, and then they have to go to Perth, so that's from New Zealand to Perth in a matter of, I think, 4 or 5 days. I'm not sure Wellington, obviously this is jumping ahead a bit, but I'm not sure Wellington will do anything against Victory without Krishna. But what do you make of that red card and their performance against Glory?
I thought the red card was a bit soft. I mean, you've got to say it. I see maybe where the ref's coming from in that, the studs were the foot was lifted off the ground a little bit.
He just didn't follow through. Like he was over the top of the ball, but he didn't commit to breaking the guy's leg.
It looked like he had really broken away from the challenge by the time there was any sort of contact made. Or I just think overall probably the refereeing this weekend was a little bit disappointing. There was probably just a few decisions again where you look at it and you thought the refs are just being a little bit harsh, and the fact that that red was just an instant red for Krishna, I just thought it just showed the referee not really having a feel for the game, and it was a bit disappointing for me. But Wellington, again, like what can you say? They're just, I don't know. They're a frustrating side to watch, really.
They are.
Without Roy Krishna, they'd probably be almost dead last, you'd have to say. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go up against Victory, because last time it was, 6-0 or 6-1 for the Victory. And he will be back for that, won't he? Because they play in the Mariners first. Right, okay. Well, look, they said it's only a one-match suspension. I'm surprised even that wasn't revoked.
It's difficult, right? Yeah.
I mean, maybe by the letter of the law it is a red, I guess, but, it's just in the context of the match, and you look at that tackle in context and you just go, nah, it's a yellow at best, and again, it just comes down to consistency as well, because you've seen some of the tackles. I mean, we saw those ones against, especially Adelaide United, early on in the season when, I think it was Wanderers versus Adelaide where, Thirio nearly had his leg snapped in half and that was a yellow. And this was nothing, and it's a straight red. And it just goes back to that whole, consistency in decisions as well. But Glory did well to notch up the win. I think they needed it. Taggart's been good when he's played. I think they actually broke it down in terms of minutes played. He's probably one of the best for in terms of goal scoring, conversion rate, because he hasn't played much, but he does get onto the end of a few.
It's difficult to judge him, right, because he's had an interrupted season, like you said. He had a good start and then got hurt and then sort of came back. What do you make of Keo, 1 goal and 7 now? He's obviously been influential in their build-up. In terms of assists, he's obviously assisted Taggart on the weekend, and he's had a few important passes, and he's influential in the build-up. But a striker's always judged by their goals, and 1 goal and 7 isn't a good look for him.
It's a bit poor.
Yeah. He hasn't been bad though.
That's the thing. He hasn't been bad, and the others around him have managed to be good in his absence, especially Castro and now Taggart as well. So, like you said, he hasn't been bad. He still gets involved. He does set players up as well, and takes defenders away and things like that. And you've got to judge all that in context. I'm sure he'd like more goals, but you can't say he's been bad. And I don't think the Glory would be concerned at this stage, because if he's not scoring and Taggart is, or if Taggart's not and he is, or both of them aren't and Castro is, they're getting goals. So that hasn't ever really been their issue. I think it's just been the defending really for Glory. So, they're back on the winner's sheet, and it just shows you how topsy-turvy that sort of last couple of places in the top 6 are, that you win one, all of a sudden you're like straight back in the 6, you lose one, you're out of it. So second half of the season is going to be super important for those other sides.
The intriguing part for me is, like, is Melbourne City and Brisbane Roar part of this chasing pack? Because they're sort of teetering on the edge of being like one bad result away from joining Perth Glory, Newcastle. Like, they're that one game away, like a bad result against like a middle table team, and they're like right in this.
Yeah, I mean, it's really sort of, and now Brisbane, obviously, with that loss as well, it's gotten really tight. And like you said, I don't think they are. I think Sydney FC and Victory are clearly the top sides. You know, I mean, you look at that. City are now on 23, Roar on 21, Glory 17, Jets 16. There's 2 games in it between City and the Glory.
It's not that much, really, considering the how they're being perceived in the media.
Exactly. Yeah, well, and that's exactly what I was going to say. You know, if you looked at it, you would say, Jets have been up or down at best, and Glory have probably been disappointing. And yet you would say that, you know, Brisbane Roar have been quite good, and City have been exciting and almost unstoppable at times as well. And for them to only be two wins ahead of Glory, I mean, that sells a lot. But you look at the top 2, Sydney FC on 36 and Victory on 29. I mean, that's just unstoppable.
What do you make of Sydney conceding 2 goals? Mariners, I think, very unlucky that the goal for Carney was offside. I thought it was a poor decision.
Yeah.
It's probably the first time that I thought Sydney didn't deserve the win, the game that they won, because I thought Mariners were very impressive. O'Donovan should have scored early on. Maybe the game was different if he did convert, but you know, Ninkovic continues to be good. Yeah,
Ninkovic outstanding, and I think Ferreira, did he miss a penalty as well there?
That was like 3 times over the bar. It's like that Italian penalty, Zaza.
I mean, that's disappointing as well. But like you said, and I think also a notable statistic there was that's the first time that Sydney FC have copped more than 1 goal this season as well. So full credit to the Mariners there. They deserved at least a point. And even then, at the end of the day, you know, Sydney didn't really look like losing at any stage, I guess. So
just more about dropping points, I think.
Yeah, look, Mariners played really well, and that was an exciting game. But I think that shows you the quality of Sydney. That maybe they were a bit lucky with that Carney goal, but just the way that they hit back, and that it was straight after the Mariners goal, that they were right back into it and trying to find a goal again. I think that just shows their character this season. Babo was pretty good there with a couple. Right place at the right time, and Ninkovic again just outstanding. I think he's you'd have to say him and Rojas probably the top 2 in the league at the moment.
I'd put Naboo as the outsider, as like in the 3, to be honest.
Well, interesting. I saw that Fox Sports article had him as the top in their voting.
Yeah, he's the outsider, definitely. Not as much media attention, but like right between. Like, in terms of the influence of, like, the team performance and how he does, like, week in, week out, I think he's right up there, personally.
Yeah, I think he is too, but I think at the end of the day, when you break it down and you see that Rojas is, like, you know, number 1 for assists.
Yeah, definitely.
And number 2 or 3 for goals.
A good team's always going to shine that light on you a bit more brightly.
Yeah, well, and true. And, you know, I think, you know, Naboo has been outstanding, and especially considering that he was almost like gone and written off before the start of the season, for him to be where he is now, that's a testament to him. But I think Ninkovic and Rojas are far and away the top 2. But what's interesting there is that none of the City players are in there. You know, no talk of Fornaroli, no talk of Cahill, Brandan, Colazzo, nothing.
What do you, just going back to the article quickly, like, who do you put as City's best player? Because I think the article put Fornaroli, which is the obvious choice.
Yeah.
Do you put him just like by default?
Hard to say, because, they really haven't had... I think for me, it might actually be Jakobsen.
Yeah, that's a fair
he's
call.
Probably been the one. Fornaroli has been good, especially earlier in the season. But then Brandan was really good for them for most of the early season as well. But I think Jakobsen's the one, and you saw in this match when he came back, Valkanis moved them to a back 4. And okay, they only won 1-0 and they had to score a specky to get it. Yeah. But they looked more comfortable in the back line, and they were playing that style that they were playing at the start of the season, where Kilkenny was really driving the ball out of the back line and really looking to create and start the attacks. And I think having Jakobsen there frees up Kilkenny, and it just changes the whole dynamic of that team. So, with Van Schip gone, I think Valkanis thought first things first is just go with a back four, and that kind of steadied things at the back for them, got them attacking a little bit more. But you look at their season, and you'd have to say like Fornaroli's in a goal slump. Hard to believe for someone who scored 30 odd goals last season, but he hasn't scored for a while. He scored that specky, but then he also missed 2 penalties. He scored another penalty, so I think like maybe 3 or 4 of his goals this season have been penalties.
Yeah, they have, yeah.
And I think he's in a bit of a slump. I think a little bit of that is just that teams have found him out now and are really double teaming him, triple teaming him, really trying to shut him out of the game.
It's frustrating that Western Sydney got that red card so early because, like, you mentioned in your takeaways article about Melbourne City, sort of like steady the ship. But I'm just curious, like, would they win that game if there wasn't 10 men? Because, like, there is question marks about how they're going to respond to Van Schip leaving, and this game sort of defaulted to them in no matter way.
Yeah, and I would have thought, with 10 men, that would have been their chance to really go all out in attack and get things going and try and put more goals against the Wanderers. So the fact that they couldn't, and then it just came down to that solitary goal, which, like I said, it was a specky. I think they're still a ways away from getting back to their best, if they can at all.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they go for this second half of the season.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, there's a Melbourne derby to come as well, and I just think, I don't know what it is. It's almost like they've just got too many attacking players, and they still haven't found that formula. Cahill's gotten better now, and he's scoring more, but that seems to have come at the expense of Fornaroli. It's going to be interesting, and they've still got the coaching situation as well, and there's all sorts of rumours flying around there. I think one of the articles was saying something like they'd got like 40 applications on the first day.
Wow.
And there's all sorts of rumours that they're getting players. The rumour was some English manager or some manager that had coached in an FA Cup final within the last 10 years or something that. But then they're saying, maybe they're going to get a more from Adelaide. And then the other one is that they really want to give Valkanis the chance to prove himself.
I think whoever comes in has to sort out that defence, right? Like that seems to be the reoccurring issue. Yeah,
I mean, you can't leave yourself that open at the
Obviously,
back.
going to the back four might fix that just naturally based off the balance of like the formation, but there's problems there.
I think so. Or just get better at attacking and score 3 or 4 goals every game, and then you might neutralise it. But the goals have dried up for them big time as well. So City probably still where they deserve to be, third, but it's slipping away from them. It really is.
What do you make of the Wanderers? They're sort of like, I think like the article mentions Nico Martinez, the best player. I tend to agree with that. He's been the most consistent. They're just an inconsistent team, aren't they? Like they have good performances, but then like they just have weeks where they won't show up. And it's very difficult to challenge for a finals position if you're 2 games, 1 in 14. They're a better team than that.
They are. I mean, 8 draws. 8 draws at least shows that they are resilient in a way, and they are hard to beat. I mean, if you look at that, they've got 8 draws. They've only got 4 losses. That's better than the Jets and the Glory, who are above them, and only 1 loss more than City and Raw. So they're not getting hammered. They're not getting beaten week in, week out, but at the same time, they can't win. And they can't get over the line, and it's almost becoming like a mental block for them now that they just cannot win and shut out a game. They seem to be getting off to slow starts. And look, one of the other rumours going around before was that Melbourne City were going to get Tony Popovich, and I mean, credit to him, he's been a top manager over the years. Wanderers have been a top 2 side almost since their inception, but you got to question it a little bit in terms of his managerial style. Like, he's just chopping and changing the side week in, week out. And like I said before, I think he's one of those managers that he either, like, as a player, he either likes you. Yeah, and the amount of like turnaround in that team, you got to question it, and he just doesn't seem to get the best out of some of the players. So you got to question his managerial style a little bit, and the fact that he's maybe not being put under any heat at the moment. I mean, that might be just a little bit due to the fact that, how much respect he's earned over the seasons. But I think a little bit of heat needs to come onto him because, and with the recruiting wise as well for the Wanderers, because they had, I think, 4 Spaniards in their squad, in their team last season. And probably 2 of their best ones they lost for this season. Dimas is the only one that's remained. The ones that they've replaced them with haven't been as good. They had a Dutch winger last season, Castellan. He was really good. They let him go. They replaced him with Kusakame. Has he been any better? Probably not. Has he lived up to his potential?
Not in
Probably
terms of output, no.
No, so I think their recruiting needs to be questioned a little bit as well, and same thing for them. They're missing that striker to finish the job. So
I don't get how so many A-League teams go into a season without like a key striker in their squad. Like that seems like the most obvious thing. Like that problem was always there for the Wanderers.
Yeah, and that and the goalkeeping one as well for them. And I think, again, that has to come down to Popovich. Is like, how do you not have, to recruit a keeper mid-season? Like, that's unusual.
It is, yeah.
Like, I can understand, you top-up defenders or midfielders or even strikers, but to have to recruit a new goalkeeper, and Janjetovic came in straight away as the number 1, which shows you how desperate their keeping situation was. Like that's a massive oversight. You got to say that they didn't really have a good goalkeeper going into the season. Like, you got to ask some questions of Popovich there. I think
it's surprising, right? Because there's 3 or 4 teams who need to do some serious work in the transfer window. Obviously, in Australia, it's not easy to do that when you can't put forward actual fees with players.
That's right.
It's been so quiet, hasn't it? Like, there's been nothing. Like, how many days through January are we? 10? There's been very little movement.
There's been little. There's been talk of Mark Bridge coming back, maybe to the Jets, maybe to the Wanderers. He was pretty good for the Wanderers in the last couple of seasons before he went overseas. I saw an article today saying Daniel Da Silva, he's finished up his time with Roda, and he might be coming back to the Glory, maybe not. They're not sure yet. So that's one. But like you said, nothing much. And, no real talk of any sort of international players or guest stints or anything like that. I am surprised a little bit. I thought, there would be some teams really trying to top up and get someone in. I think Sydney FC still might. They were saying they've got capacity in the cap.
What do you make of the situation there with the defenders, right? They're kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel. I know I saw in training that Brandon O'Neill has been training at centre back. They've got Sebastian Real. I think he's got a pretty bad hamstring.
Yeah.
Yerman's gone. Brillante's got the 5 yellow cards, so he's suspended for the derby in Sydney. They could have an interesting back 4 in the derby. Yeah,
I think it's a concern for them because, like you said, at first they thought, Yerman's gone. We've got Ryle. It's not the end of the world, but now Ryle's done a hammy straight away.
4 weeks, yeah.
That
really
spells
bad.
trouble for them. For a side that's conceded only 7 goals all season, and prides itself on its defence, it is a little bit of a worry. But look, I think at the end of the day, they've probably got top spots sewn up. And at the end of the day, also, it's in the A-League, at least it's winning the grand final. So if they can tough out the next few weeks and get over those kind of injuries and suspensions and things like that, it's really important for them to just come through at the end of the season. So I know Graham Arnold wouldn't want to lose, and they are still going for that undefeated streak. But if they were to lose 1 or 2 now, it wouldn't be the end of the world for them, I think.
How big of a threat do you give the Wanderers to Sydney's unbeaten streak in the league? Because, as you said, they got players out. The Wanderers haven't looked great, to be fair. But, the derbies always produce crazy moments. It's not always about form when you enter these sort of fixtures.
Yeah.
Do you think the back 4 is going to be unstable? What chances do you give the Wanderers?
I give them some chance. I think they're just still a little bit too impotent to be able to do anything.
Yeah.
Really looking forward to this game. I've got tickets for it.
Oh, really? You go?
Nearly a sellout already.
Oh, wow.
I was late on the ball there.
Are you up in the clouds?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. There wasn't really much available, so I think that's actually good in terms of atmosphere.
Yeah.
But it's Sydney FC's only home derby this season, so there's one more, I guess, for the Wanderers in Spotless. This is the only one at Allianz. So it's a Sydney FC home game.
It should be massive.
I think it'll be massive. It's going to be a huge clash. Look, the Wanderers, in a derby, you always have to kind of throw the form guide out a little bit. Probably the rule book as well.
I hope it's better than the first derby. I still have bad memories of that one.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think Wanderers are going to go for it. They've got no choice. They're seventh. Yeah. They're seventh and they need to win. And I think, they're going to be fired up for it. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see now, probably a little bit of heat on Sydney as well, in terms of they've just been so red hot. This is a good test for them in terms of can they deal with the pressure and the big games
that
and
finals atmosphere.
Exactly. There's going to be 50,000 there. It's going to be heaving. It's going to be tense. And I think Wanderers will throw everything they've got at them.
Are you brave enough to predict them getting a point or 3 from Sydney?
No, they might take a point. I can't see them beating. I can't see them beating Sydney.
Just because
FC.
of lack of goals.
Yeah, I think so. They just don't have it in them.
I think they'll score, but I don't think enough. Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure. Is Santalab still suspended? I think he copped 3 games, didn't he? He copped 3, and they've also, who was their defender there, they got booked for so he's gone, I think, for 3 as well for that elbow.
How bad was that? I saw replays, but they didn't really show it properly.
Again, at first it looked more like a yellow, probably. Yeah. I mean, it was an elbow, but he didn't really, I guess, move the elbow. It was more just that he kind of stuck his elbow out, I guess. Yeah. If you can, clutching straws there, but it's not like he really swung his elbow into the guy's face. So you could maybe say it was a yellow, but on the face of it, again, you stick your elbow out like that and the player cops it in the head, you're asking to be sent off. So I just think Wanderers will be under a bit of pressure, and I could see a draw, but at the same time, I could see Sydney FC 4-0.
Really?
To be honest, I could see it that way. Sydney are just red hot, man. I can just see it again being one of those games. It'll be tense and it'll be close, and then 60th minute it'll just be bang bang Sydney FC 2-0, and maybe 1 or 2 more at the end, and all of a sudden it's a 4-0 blowout. I can really see it going that way.
Do you think the Wanderers are ever going to be in a situation this season where there's significant questions being asked of their team, of their performances? Because they seem to be stuck in this position where they're doing enough to escape criticism, but they're not performing well enough to really challenge for this top 6. It seems like at the moment. Obviously, they're only 2 points behind Newcastle, but Newcastle seem in a much better position, just in terms of balance and attacking threat.
That's right. Well, look, like I said, I think there should be heat on them because I think their recruiting's been poor.
Yeah.
I think the man management from Popovic has been a bit poor as well. And like you said, in a league where really only the top 4 are really any good this season, for the Wanderers to be 7th, that's disappointing.
It is, yeah. They got a strong team.
They got a strong team, and okay, you could say maybe the Glory are equally as strong a squad on paper, but for the Jets to be above them, and for Wellington to only be 2 points behind them and Mariners only 4 points behind them, I think that's disappointing from the Wanderers. They really should be on top 4, top 5 this season. So look, it's not over yet, but I think there should be more heat on them. So it'll be interesting to see if the trend of draws continues.
I don't know if you wanted to mention quickly the Newcastle-Brisbane game before we move on to the round 15 proper. For me, I thought Newcastle were great. I didn't have a problem with Theo. There was sort of a question mark of whether he's got contact, whether it was a foul or not. I thought it was completely fine. I thought this was the one game the refereeing was of a very high standard. I thought he made correct decision on the penalty. I thought he did well with yellow cards. He controlled a game that was pretty high in intensity. The boo continues to be fantastic. Nordstrand is important. The first time Brisbane lose back-to-back games, they've lost to Newcastle twice this season. Do you think Brisbane, they just don't seem to be fully settled about what they're trying to do yet?
Yeah, I think, it looked like when the game opens up a bit, that's not Brisbane's style almost.
Not, yeah.
They like to keep it tight, and good on the Jets. They took the game to them, and they got the win, and there was good strikes all round. The Tommy Orr goal was really good. The Hull goal was great. And then Nordstrom at the end again with a bit of quality as well. So you got to give it to the Jets there. I thought they were outstanding. Brisbane Roar, like you said, 2 losses in a row now. Slipped back down to 4th. But, it's not the end of the world for them either. I think they're doing all right. But I think it just shows that, when they try to be a bit more expansive and open it up a little bit, they can't keep the goals out. So maybe those kind of tight 1-0 games are more their style.
Okay, so let's move on to round 15. We've sort of covered the Sydney Wanderers game already. Adelaide United, Melbourne City is on the Thursday. Adelaide home again. This will be an interesting game in terms of atmosphere. Like, the fans may not show up. That's a game you could get a seat for, I think. What is your prediction for this one, do you think? Adelaide respond. Melbourne City, obviously, still question marks about where they are now with Van Schip gone.
Yeah,
this could be a bit of a banana peel for Melbourne City. It's hard to give Adelaide any sort of encouragement in terms of performances, but you never know, right?
No, you never know, and like you said, if this is a chance for Adelaide, City, like you said, being in a slump for quite some time now, and they're going into a bit of a hornet's nest, really, because, like you said, you don't know what it's going to be like at Adelaide. Are the players going to be fired up? Well, is it going to be that, or I just have a feeling like, is there going to be a protest in the stadium?
Well, that could
or
happen, right?
Like
it could be completely full for the protest. Fans may want to show up now.
They might show up and then do a walkout.
Yeah.
You never know. Look, I think Adelaide fans are good in the sense that they support their team. So from that point of view, I think it's a Thursday night game. They hopefully will get the crowd. And Cahill's there and Fornaroli and stuff. It's Melbourne City. It's big names. So they hopefully should get the crowd. But it's just going to be interesting. If City go ahead and City are winning 2-0 or something at half-time, what's going to happen? I just have a feeling that there might be, there might be a preempted protest or something. There might be banners unfurled. Who knows what's going to happen? So I'm hoping to see that Adelaide United will be fired up. And if they do play well, this is their chance because City are vulnerable at the back.
They are, yeah.
And they haven't scored, I think, more than a couple of goals consistently for a while either. So a good chance for United. I think this is going to be a great game just in terms of, I just want to see the fallout. This is one of those ones, it's like a car crash. You just want to see what's going to happen. Yeah, because if Adelaide win, then, is everything kind of smoothed over? But I have a feeling there might even be, pre-match protests and stuff. It's like we said at the start, the reaction from Adelaide management is just completely the wrong approach. And they've painted themselves into a corner now.
I bet they wish they didn't have a home game this week.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, sometimes in these kind of situations, an away game's the best thing for them. But yeah, fireworks, I think. Whatever happens is going to be fireworks.
Do you think it translates onto the pitch for Adelaide, or do you think they just lose?
Look,
I think there's going to be fireworks off the pitch.
Yeah.
But
whether that affects the players or not, I'm not sure, but I just don't see them winning just from the fact that they don't have the quality. So unless it's just individual brilliance from an Enrique or a Karuska or something like that to bag a couple of goals themselves, I don't see an Adelaide United team performance being good enough.
Yeah, I agree. But as much as you want to see them do well in this game, I think them losing might be a bit more entertaining this week.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, as bad as it is for Adelaide fans.
That's right.
For victory, Brisbane, it's at home for the Melbourne team. Brisbane travelling have kind of hit a mini slump. McLaren hasn't scored for a few weeks now. The article we've mentioned a few times already, they have Thomas Christensen as their best player.
Yeah.
I do tend to agree. It's similar to City that midfield is so important to teams that are trying to attack. Obviously Brisbane not at that level that City are, but he's equally as important in my eyes. Do you think they can bounce back against victory? Obviously victory is so important, but maybe these 3 games coming up will force them to rotate a little bit at home.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a tough fixture for Raw coming off the back of 2 losses. Now they got to go to Melbourne, who are just red hot. on Friday night
Big
in
game.
Melbourne
Yeah.
against the Victory, you're more likely to lose than not, no matter who it is. But like you said, now Victory have got the Friday game, then they've got the Tuesday game, and then they've got
I think they play on
another
the
Saturday game in Perth.
And that's,
So
Melbourne to New Zealand to Perth, yeah.
yeah, so that's, that might be the only thing that plays in Brisbane's favour, that Victory might have to rotate things, but they're just so red hot at the moment. I can't see them coughing up even a point to Brisbane. I think they'll get all three against Brisbane. And then maybe they'll rotate. They'd rather, I think, rotate things in
Wellington,
in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might be the one. And then obviously they go to Glory as well, and that's always a tough place to go anyway. So that might be the only thing going in Brisbane's favour. But I still think Victory against Brisbane, all 3 points.
Yeah,
I think
Victory will win too, and I think Brisbane will do very well if they get a draw from this game. It's a very tough fixture off the back of 2 losses.
Yeah.
I think one of the big games for me is Wellington Phoenix Central Coast Mariners. I think mostly because of the Mariners' performance last week against Sydney. We've got Roy Krishna out, and without him, do Wellington even have goals in them, which is a question mark. The Mariners, if they do win, they jump over Wellington, and they're only about a point behind the Wanderers. So, I mean, it's a big game for them if they have any ambition of making that, 6th spot. Do you think Wellington at home win this game? Because I feel like this is a big danger game for Wellington.
It is. I think they might get the points here just because I think Mariners are too inconsistent, and I don't think they're good enough to go to Wellington and get all 3. I don't think they're that side.
They haven't travelled well this season.
No. So I think, look, they gave it their all against Sydney, and they would have been shattered after that result. Krishna out for Phoenix, but it might be a draw, but I'd give Phoenix the win here. And look, they've got 2 in a row, Phoenix as well. So it's a big opportunity for them if they can, get maybe a win against the Mariners and at least a draw against Victory and get 4 points out of these 2. That's a pretty good result for them. So I'm going to tip Phoenix for the win in this one.
Yeah, I think it'll be a draw, but I do agree with you. I think it's a very important week for Wellington. 2 home games against teams that have struggled lately, and if they can get 6 points, I mean, they're right in finals contention. So it's a big week for Wellington.
Yep.
This round actually is very good, isn't it? There's matches
There's
all
a
over
few
the place that have a lot of
blockbusters,
talking points. The next one, Newcastle Perth, 5th and 6th, both
Well,
coming
you've missed the big one. The big one.
What,
the
Sydney
the
Wanderers?
derby Saturday. Yeah.
Well, we
that's
sort of
Saturday.
mentioned that. Do you want to bring it back?
Yeah, I would. I
Yep.
would, just to get a prediction out of you. Look, I'm going to tip Sydney FC for the win here. I think they're going to be too strong. I'm going to tip 3-0.
Really? Yeah.
I think it's going to be celebration time for Sydney FC here. They're really gonna throw it down here.
You sort of commented on it before, but I think a 3-0, a 4-0 defeat for the Wanderers, and I think they're in the sort of Adelaide territory of questions of, because they seem aimless in what they're trying to do, and obviously they're not at the point where Adelaide is, but I feel like fans will start to put on pressure. I think this is the game that if things go horrible, you sort of think they will, and I think it's going to be hostile in the crowd too. I don't think Sydney are going to win 3-0 though. I feel like their back line is going to influence the rest of their team performance. I think Sydney can still win, but I would not be surprised if it's a 1-0 draw or something.
Ooh, all right. Big call.
Yeah.
Big call.
I think, though, if you're right and it's a 3-0, look out. Protect yourself, because I think Wanderers fans might turn on them.
Oh, yeah. I won't be wearing a sky blue shirt, put it that way.
Keep it neutral.
I'll keep my head down.
Maybe a Perth Glory shirt or something.
Yeah.
What do you give the chances of Glory this week? They play on the Sunday. Haven't won in 6 away games. I think it might be 7. Newcastle, obviously, very impressive against Brisbane at home. Keogh, like we said, hasn't scored for 7 games. Can you see him scoring? And do you see Perth Glory fixing their awful away form?
Yeah, I look, it's a hard one to call because, like you said, Jets so impressive, but then, they cough a couple up at home and, they're so inconsistent, and so are the Glory. But you look at the form ladder and Jets are right up there.
They are, yeah.
I think 3 wins and a draw in their last 6. So they've been quite impressive. Glory, same old story still, just super unconvincing. It'll be interesting. Taggart, former Jet, playing in Newcastle, I think probably for the first time since coming back to the A-League. So that'll be interesting. I'm inclined to give Jets the win here and actually back-to-back wins. I think they're on a little bit of a red-hot streak at the moment, and they've been getting players back. Nordstrom back now. I think Kako's coming back. They got Bugard back in defence. Hull's been in top form. I think it's all just kind of coming together a little bit for the Jets now. I think that they might just be too strong for the Glory. Glory, Keogh hasn't scored for a while. Castro's been good, and so has Taggart, but like you said, questionable on the road. They're
not being good collectively, are they? No. Enough to, I don't know what's with the away form. They just, because I think they're defensively, there's so much issues, then they concede early, and when you concede early at home, the pressure's there, right? I think... Yep. I sort of mentioned it in the preview article that we'll release this week. I think Newcastle are going to actually set up as if they're the away team, because I think they're going to trust their defence more than the Perth Glory is going to trust theirs, and I think they're going to counter. And if Newcastle score early, I think Glory are really going to struggle.
I think so, and like you said, when the Glory have played well, it's just been off the back of individual performances, like Castro, just taking the game by the scruff of the neck against City and stuff like that. So I think Jets might be too strong in this one. I'll give them the win.
Not only will I give Newcastle the win, but I feel at the end of this January, I think Newcastle are going to be above Brisbane Roar on the ladder.
Wow. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised that they are going well. This will be the test. I mean, at home against the Glory, if they're going to be a top 6 side and they want to make something of their season, they really should pump the Glory 2 or 3-0.
The problem with the Glory is because of their away form, they don't win this. They've got a really tough game against Victory the week after. I mean, if they don't win for 3 weeks, they're in real trouble. If they're not picking up points away from home, their home record has to be immaculate.
Yeah, and that's right, and they haven't even been doing that.
They haven't.
It's
they
just
lost
been
to
that
Newcastle
season.
at home, didn't they? So I mean, they've got some revenge there to take care of.
It all started at the start of the season when they coughed up the points, or a point to Mariners, 3-3. So it's just been the story of their season, Glory, and like I said, we're probably sick of talking about it now because it's the same old story for Glory. But look, I think Jets will beat them here, and then like you said, real pressure on them against Victory on next Saturday after that. It's going to be interesting.
What do you make of the Victory? They play Wellington first and then Glory at home. Do you think these two fixtures, do they have an influence on each other? Does this travel, the midweek game, 3 times in a week, I think 3 times in 8 days, does this all have an influence? Or do you think Victory just win comfortably these games? It's hard to tell what these fixtures are going to mean to them.
It is. This is the first real sort of test like that. I think travelling to Wellington, it's not easy, but it's easier for Melbourne than for a team like the Glory to do it for the distance. So it's not the end of the world, the travel, but the fact that they've got to back up after a Friday game and play again on Tuesday afternoon, that's going to be tough. I do think they've got the depth in the squad to be able to sort of rotate a few players around and sort of balance it out a little bit. But then the fact that they've got another game on Saturday after that, it does put pressure on them. But in their favour is that A, they're red hot, B, they've got the squad depth, and C, Phoenix have been fairly bad all season, including at home. They haven't been any good at home either this season, the Phoenix. So, look, if Melbourne beat Raw and they beat Phoenix away, watch out Sydney FC, because that's really Victory throwing down the gauntlet then, I think, and making a huge statement.
It's kind of what the neutrals want to happen, right? For Melbourne Victory to keep winning for this Australia Day clash, right? Because this is a very tough period for Melbourne Victory, and that match on Australia Day might mean nothing in a week time.
That's right. I think if they come out of this with 2 wins, that's going to be huge. But look, I think they'd probably be happy from those first 2 games. I think they'd be ecstatic even if they got 4 points. A win against the Raw and a draw against the Phoenix.
I think 7 in 3 would be an excellent win for Victory. Yeah,
I think they'd be really happy with that. I give them a chance against the Phoenix,
but
maybe
their toughest game is these 3 games. Do you think it's Brisbane or?
It could be the Glory, to be honest, because the Glory, again, on their day, the Glory can be really good because Keogh, at the end of the day, is a really good striker. Castro is one of the top players in the league, and they've got Taggart as well. So, I mean, you look at it on the face of it, Glory are probably the only side, or probably the best side with two quality strikers. They got Keogh and Taggart.
Yeah, it's a fair call, yeah. As we said, a lot of teams are struggling in that striker position.
Yeah, and look, Kenny Lowe's been lamenting the fact that I think, Taggart, Keogh and Castro have only played like 3 games together or something like that. Yeah. So you can understand a little bit of Kenny Lowe's frustration there, that if he actually had Castro, Taggart and Keogh for the whole season, maybe things would be better.
It's like we said, right, that individual brilliance may be getting them away wins just based off, the quality of that player. Yeah, exactly.
So for the victory coming to Perth, it really depends. And look, we're coming into summer now as well. You never know if it's a scorcher in Perth. That's going to play an effect. Yeah, that could have an effect as well.
Especially coming from Wellington, right? That may be freezing.
Exactly, and that will be their 3rd game then in that week, so it will be starting to take its toll, and you just don't know what Glory you're going to get as well.
What sort of knocks they get in the first game. Like if they've got knocks, the recovery is not going to be good.
Exactly. Look, I think the Brisbane Roar game will be their toughest probably, just because that's 2 top sides. And I think the Raw will take the game to them and try and beat them against the Phoenix and then against the Glory. It really depends on how the opposition actually turns out.
Yeah, but just like what sort of knocks they get, if any. Like, how
that's right. It's
the squad, yeah.
Yeah, and I think how they come out of those 3 games is then really going to dictate the second half of the season for them. If, like I said, 7 points for them, it's going to be huge, and it's really setting them up for a big second half of the season.
So we sort of mentioned it this round. I think very, very interesting. There's a lot of narrative behind a lot of the games. What is your game that you're most looking forward to? Obviously, you're going to the Sydney Wanderers game, so maybe that wins by default. But if you had to pick one game, what do you think is going to be the most interesting, whether it's on the field or off the field?
Oh, look, I mean, for me, it's definitely Adelaide, Melbourne City.
Yeah, I feel like it.
There's a lot riding on that one. I think so. Look, I think we've talked about it already, but the club has really put the fans offside there. The fans who have actually been outstanding, I thought. Are
you surprised that the media's come out that and defended the fans? Because obviously, they didn't have to, right? Like the fans could have been by themselves here, but the media and radio have come out and said, "What are you doing, Adelaide United?" You're turning on the fans.
It's a poor call. I mean, look, like I said, I can understand there's maybe some of the fans probably went a little bit over the top in abuse and things like that. And if the club issued a statement around that would have been fine. But for the club then to defend its recruitment and things like that, I just think, why? Why get so defensive about it? And they haven't really said, what they're going to do to fix it. And, they never sort of even went so far as to acknowledge, we've had a bad season and things haven't gone as we planned. There wasn't any sort of humbleness or admittance of any issues or anything. It's just
there was a bit of arrogance at the end. They were saying, we'll go back to where we belong. And I'm like, no, you're pretty much where you belong because you haven't sorted your club
The ladder
out.
doesn't lie.
Exactly.
The ladder doesn't lie. And I think everybody called it at the start of the season that their recruiting just wasn't good enough.
You definitely did. You had big concerns about who they recruited.
We had big doubts. Yeah. And I think it's been shown up. Big time. And look, I mean, that's the nature of the A-League. There's salary cap. When you're a top team, players get poached, players go overseas, they want more money, you've got a salary cap. And that's something that the FFA need to address because it's happened time and time again. It happened, Brisbane Roar won back-to-back championships. They had Broich as their marquee. Berisha had banged in 25 goals for the season. He wanted a pay rise. Brisbane Roar couldn't give it to him. They asked for an exemption with the FFA. FFA knocked them back. And Melbourne Victories came in and poached him as their marquee. And then a couple of years later, FFA bend over backwards and create an exemption so that City can get Cahill. So that's just another one of those FFA things that just makes your head spin.
What do you really think about the FFA, Ed? I think I'm talking about them.
Look, you know what? The FFA they've done a lot right, but I think when they make mistakes or when they're not doing their job, they got to be called out.
I reckon you should release a new article every week. This week with the FFA and just list your grievances. You just have a list that you add to.
Do you know what? We'd never run out of articles. I think so. Look, don't get me started because my blood's starting to boil. But that's one thing, and you got to take that into consideration. But at the same time, Adelaide United should have known better.
Oh, definitely.
The
last minute nature of the transfers concerned me. Just as someone that didn't know the club too well. It was red flags all over the place.
Guardiola came in, at the last minute, and you got to question the fact that Amor's a Barcelona legend. Hasn't he got some contacts for one?
Yeah.
And second of all, for the last couple of seasons, Adelaide United have been recruiting Spanish and Latino players, and they've all been quality. They got Thirio, they got Carusca, they got Isaias, they got Sanchez. That's 4 top quality Spanish and Latino players. Obviously they've been recruiting well. What happened?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm not saying they had to get Spaniards again, but obviously they had found a good recruitment method, and they were getting good second tier Spanish players who were thriving in the league, and it was working because they had a Spanish manager and things like that.
And the reigning champs, right? They should have so much appeal for people coming in.
That's right. They got ACL.
Play in the Asian Cup. Yeah, I don't get it.
I'm just so curious to see what's going to happen. The fans, I think, they're not going to let this go.
No.
And if Adelaide lose, God help everyone there, because
it'll be a fun podcast next week.
Yeah, look, I think it's going to be interesting. It's going to be fireworks. The derby's going to be amazing, just because it always is with the atmosphere, and it's going to be, I think, a good game as well. But if you want fireworks, Adelaide United's where it's at this weekend, I think.
Well, you let me know if the Wanderers fans turn on the club as well, because I think that may happen too.
If you don't hear back from me, I might be in a bit of trouble.
I have to find someone with the bitter about the FFA. It's going to be...
That's right.
I have to get some sort of registration list going.
Yeah.
So I am looking forward to the round 15. I'm looking forward to your new piece, the grievances with the FFA.
That's right.
But on to the EPL, there wasn't much really to cover, because the only game we didn't talk about last podcast was the Spurs-Chelsea game.
Yeah, wow.
Spurs, they've blown open the title race a little bit, isn't it? I did mention how would Chelsea respond after they lose. They obviously won in the FA Cup midweek, but interesting to play Leicester. Leicester have sort of improved. They've righted the ship a little bit.
Yep.
What do you think of this week of EPL? It's good to have it back. I've missed it. I'm not a fan of the early rounds of the FA Cup.
Yeah, I mean, Arsenal, I guess, get out of jail in the FA Cup.
You see who they drew though, right? It's over for them.
Yeah, and look, I don't think that's too bad really, because Arsenal, they really need to focus on the league now. Like you said, it's kind of, Tottenham have given everybody a bit of a lifeline. Still probably just a blip on the radar for Chelsea. I think it'll be business as usual for them. I think you might see them pump Leicester and get back into the swing of things.
I hope not, but I think they might,
I think they will. I mean, I think it'll just be a blip on the radar. But the big one this weekend, I mean, Leicester-Chelsea is huge. But United-Liverpool, that's going to be a ripper, game. I think, as well.
Annoying time. I wish it wasn't the Monday night, but...
Yeah, but I mean, look, there's so much riding on it now because, like I said, Liverpool are only 5 points off Chelsea now. If Chelsea were to, say, draw with Leicester, they go to 50. Yeah. Liverpool get the win, go to 47. All of a sudden, it's like, wow. Or if Chelsea were even to lose.
Because Chelsea, 13, 14 wins in a row, and now they draw a game. If they draw this week, they're only a game behind Liverpool. It's just crazy how, momentum shifts so quickly.
That's right, and Tottenham have dragged themselves right back into it now as well. Right City, I mean, and look, City. It's interesting because you think Man City and Man United are both in a crisis. The way like you said, the sort of perception around them, and yet City are 4th and United are 6th. City on 42 and United on 39. There's really not much separating them.
This season's been weird, isn't it? Because United haven't been spoken about. I think because there's so many personalities in the league now. You've got Pep, you've got Klopp, you've got all these top 6 clubs really fighting. And I think sometimes clubs just don't get spoken about, and then they you see, oh wow, Liverpool are 3rd. You know what I mean? This sort of thing.
I know, like it's almost like Mourinho's just got to up the ante in craziness to even get in the news anymore.
He's got to
like
kick an official or something.
He's going to have to like choke a ball boy out or something just to like get a mention now because it's
like he's got to escalate
his antics
somewhere.
His antics aren't. But it's interesting. The perception there is that especially
he can
for
like
United,
rock bottom Klopp or something this weekend.
Yeah, just something. Yeah, he'll just go off at him or something. But I think it's going to be a ripper. Honestly. I'd like to see Liverpool just pump them.
I'd love to see that, yeah.
But
even though as an Arsenal fan, that would make it hard for Arsenal to catch them. But yeah, I'd just love to see United crumble.
Yeah, but look, and look, Liverpool are a goal-scoring machine, but at the same token, they do concede a little bit. United are getting back into it. Ibrahimovic is really starting to get better. Pogba's starting to get better. Mkhitaryan's getting better. The United aren't that bad now, considering the hysteria around them at the start of the season.
I'm surprised they haven't. The transfer rumours, like that defender I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, that's just gone quiet. Like I'm not sure what's happened there.
Look, I think he's probably gone to China. He's probably playing for Shanghai Shenhua or something like that. But I think Man United's they're not in the top four, so they'll still be disappointed. But they're clawing their way back. I think that's going to be a huge game. Everton, Man City as well. Look, Everton are seventh all of a sudden now.
They've finally found some form. Baines is back doing well. Lukaku's scoring again. So, I mean, that's a danger game, yeah. That
is. I mean, admittedly, the gap between the top six and the rest is pretty big. So it's almost like the good old days of that top four. Now it almost is like a top six, isn't it? It's Chelsea, Liverpool, Tottenham, City, Arsenal, and United. They're like your top six teams now, which is good to see Liverpool back in there and challenging.
You made me think of something actually. I don't know if you saw like all the FA Cup results, but like Bournemouth, Stoke, and someone else I forget, but they rotated their squad heavily, and basically through the match, and then like sort of people are questioning like, well, if you're not trying to win the FA Cup, what is your season about? Because like you mentioned, there's a big gap between the top six. That fifth, sixth is Europa spots. I mean, they're not competing for that at the moment. So why aren't you trying to win the FA Cup?
Well, because
the money. I guess.
It's all about survival.
Yeah.
It's all about survival. No one wants to play in Europa League, and really, FA Cup has lost that
the shine,
the shine as well. And now it's just really all about staying up. And like you said, you've got Hull City last on 13. Leicester, who are 6 spots above them, are only on 21 points. And you look at that log jam in the middle of the table there from Leicester on 21.
Like Southampton even, right? Like
that's right. Look, Southampton on 24, Bournemouth 25. Look, it's not certain for any of those teams. So it really is all about survival, because that's sad really, that these teams consider finishing middle of the table a success.
Yeah, I mean, like staying in the EPL is worth 100 million, right? So it's crazy.
Exactly. It's a little bit sad really that's what it's come down to, but I think that's what it is. Like, no one wants to play in the Europa League unless you're actually going to win it and get into the Champions League. The FA Cup, it may be, depending on what fixtures were coming up for them, but there's some real sort of 6-pointers now, because you've got Burnley, Southampton.
Huge game.
That's a huge game. And, Sunderland, Stoke, that's another one
even
as
West
well.
Ham, Crystal Palace, that's a massive game.
That's right. Yeah. So they're all kind of like right there playing each other now. And like I said, even Hull, Bournemouth, if Hull win, all of a sudden they drag themselves back up, and Bournemouth get dragged back into that quagmire.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Negative 27.
I think Hull are gone. I think Hull are gone. But for the other teams, there's still a chance. And so, you look at a team like Leicester, and they're well and truly in that relegation mix, and they won't consider themselves safe at all.
Not until they're in the top half, yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's sad that that's a little bit sad that that's what the league's come down to, but I think it has. It's just a battle for survival. So I think this is just a massive, massive weekend of football, really. It's just going to be amazing.
Yeah, it's huge. Like the A-League pretty much the full weekend, and then the Monday we've got the Man United Liverpool game, so I'm really looking forward to it.
It's just wall-to-wall football.
Is there anything else you wanted to mention before we log off for the night?
No, I think, let's call it a day, bring on the weekend, and we'll touch base again next week, see what's gone down.
Well, hopefully you're okay. You survived
It'll be
The
fun.
Civil
It's
War
always a good
between-
experience in a Western in a Sydney derby. It's always good fun. So I'm just looking forward to it. I think it'll be a great atmosphere and hopefully a cracking game as well.
Hopefully you enjoy yourself. Good luck. Who are you supporting in that game?
Oh, look, I'm going to remain relatively neutral. I think I just want to see goals.
You one of those people?
Yeah, I want to see goals. Maybe a little bit of flares and just a
You
good
can hand out
atmosphere,
the
I
average
think.
Australian shirts. We'll print some off.
Yeah, well, bring the two sides together. We'll bring some
We'll
peace
do
amongst the
some
fans.
kumbaya moment.
That's right.
Well, thanks for joining me, Ed, and we will see everyone this time next week. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you. See ya.